Hi guys, my name's Haley, and I am going to be giving a presentation today about studying abroad in Gold Coast, Australia, which is where I just was for the past 3 months, and I came home early due to COVID. So yeah, now I'm going to talk a little bit about that and the process of getting into that and also what I did there. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the process of applying to study abroad. So basically, when you do this, it's going to depend on what university you go to back at home and kind of how they do it. I go to UMass Amherst, and the way that I did it was I applied through a separate program called CIS Abroad that partners with UMass. So I basically had to apply through UMass and through CIS and get approved both ways for that. And most of my application was actually for CIS, but I also had to do it for UMass Amherst too. So it's kind of going to depend on what university you go to, how you apply. But a lot of the times at a university, there'll be like a study abroad office that you can go to and ask a lot of questions. I would say that it is a lot of work to study abroad, but it's definitely worth it. And there's always people there to help you with the process. So it's not that difficult. So next I'm going to talk about the university that I studied at, which is called Bond University in Gold Coast, Australia. So these are some pictures of Bond University, and so yeah, this is our campus. It's a pretty small school. There's only about 3,000 to 4,000 students that are undergrad. This is very different from UMass because there's about 30,000 undergrad students there, but I did enjoy going to a small school for a semester because the class sizes were really small and I was able to make a good relationship with my professors. So that was definitely a good thing about going to a small university. But in general, I definitely prefer going to a large one. But as you can see, the university is right on the water, so it's a beautiful campus. And yeah. So next I'm going to talk about Australian culture and the people there. So these are just some pictures that I included because surf culture is really big in Australia. A lot of people surf, and I would say in general the people in Australia really enjoy being outside and enjoying the nice weather. The Gold Coast is known for having beautiful weather all year round. Well, the time that we went, it was very hot, like high 80s and 90s, but now they're getting into their winter season, so it's becoming more like 70s and 60s, but still beautiful and sunny a lot of the time. So a lot of people take the chance to hike and surf and enjoy the water and things like that. I also included some pictures of vans, which a lot of people drive around in when they have their surfboards on the top, or that's how they travel around. It's very common to see there, which is not really something you see around here, but you might see more in like California or something like that. Next, I'm going to be talking about Australian food. So this is some of the food that I ate while I was there. As you can see, it's pretty typical food, very similar to American food, which I honestly really enjoyed because I'm kind of a picky eater and I didn't really want to have to get used to a different type of food. Something that they're really into there is like having a lot of fruit with every meal because they have very good weather, so they have very good fruit all year round. I would say that, they have very good steak. They're known for their steak. I had like a lot of tacos while I was there, stuff like that. They, in Melbourne, which is one of the cities I went to, they're known for their coffee, which is very good. So yeah, I would say that it's pretty similar to US food, which is one of the reasons why I picked to go to Australia, so I didn't have to get used to a new type of food. So now I'm going to talk about Australian animals. So these are some of the animals that we saw while we were there. I'd say the two most common well-known animals in Australia are koalas and kangaroos, which we both saw the first day that we got to Australia. We also saw alligators, and when I went on a trip to North Stradbroke Island, which I'm going to be talking about more later, we would see kangaroos almost like everywhere we went. Even if we were driving on the road, you could see a kangaroo on the side of the street. But where I stayed and other places that I traveled, it's not as common to see kangaroos out in the wild, but they're definitely there in the woods, just not really like on the roads like they were at North Stradbroke Island. Other common animals are like iguanas, or there's a lot of sharks in certain parts of Australia. Not really where I stayed from my understanding, but at North Stradbroke Island there was a lot, and some other places. So now I'm going to talk about Gold Coast, which is where I stayed and where my university was. So it was kind of like a central location for me, even though I was traveling a lot. So these are some pictures of Gold Coast. A lot of these pictures, the bottom left picture is right actually outside my apartment building, and the waterfall was probably like an hour drive from where I was staying. And then the other pictures are of Burleigh Beach, which was probably 20 minutes from my apartment and was the beach that we went to most of the time when we did go to the beach. So as you can see, like where I stay is very close to the water and it's very easy to get there. Yeah, and it's beautiful, water's really warm, everything like that. So now I'm going to talk about the different places that I traveled within Australia while I was there. So first I'm going to talk about the Great Barrier Reef, which is the first place I went to in Cairns, Australia. That's the name of the area that we were in, and I went here right when I arrived on June 4th-ish. So these are some pictures that I got or took while I was there. As you can see, the water is very clear, and we went snorkeling and scuba diving while we were there. The water that you're in is surrounded by mountains, which is really beautiful. It's amazing to see, once in a lifetime experience. The animals down there, there's a ton of sea animals. We saw turtles, squids, stingrays, tons of colorful fish. We didn't see any sharks, but there definitely is sharks in the Great Barrier Reef. We went in like an underwater submarine that we could see a lot of the animals like lower to the surface of the sand, which was great to see. I actually didn't scuba dive, but I snorkeled. There was many people that also scuba dived on my trip. And yeah, it's great to see the animals in the water. So now I'm going to talk about Sydney, Australia, which is a very well-known place in Australia for many reasons. As you can see in the top left corner, that is the Sydney Opera House, which is very well known. And next to that is in the Botanical Gardens in Sydney, which is the koala made out of grass and trees, which is something we saw. The pool that you can see in the top middle, that's at Bondi Beach, which is also the picture below. Those are called the Bondi Iceberg pools. So basically what it is, it's like a pool club that you can join, or you can pay for the day to go see it if you're like a tourist or something like that. Basically it's just like a swimming lap pool, but it's freezing cold and it's right on the water. So when there's big waves, the water from the ocean actually splashes into the pool. So it's just kind of a cool thing to see, like a pool right on the ocean. And in the bottom right corner is a concert that I attended in Sydney. I would say Sydney is a little less like city-ish compared to Melbourne, which I'm going to talk about next. There's a beach and yeah, it's just a little like more surf culture and like beautiful compared to like a normal city like Boston or New York City, something like that. So now Melbourne. So when I went to Melbourne, these pictures look a little different than the actual city looks. In the top left corner, that is the city of Melbourne. But when I went there, most of my pictures are from going on a day trip on the Great Ocean Road. So what that is you basically drive up the coast of Melbourne, and there's a bunch of different stops on the way. There's probably like 10 different stops, but in total, we didn't do the whole thing, but in total, it's probably like a 10-hour drive to see the whole thing. So most of these pictures are from the 12 Apostles or the Lord George Arch. The other kind of like house-looking painted things are called the Brighton bathing boxes, and it's kind of like a tourist attraction. Basically what it is, it's a bunch of these little houses on the beach where people go to the beach like it's a normal beach, and people can like rent them out and put their beach stuff in them for the day, and people paint them and they're beautiful. A lot of people take pictures with them. I'd say it's more of like a tourist attraction versus like an actual use of the houses during the day, but it's very cool to see. Next, I'm going to talk about Byron Bay, which was probably my favorite place to go during my trip. So these are some pictures of it. Basically, Byron Bay is like a huge surf culture area. Everyone is carrying surfboards and going to the beach. Everyone's very relaxed. It's not a city, so there's not really people working or anything. Liam Hemsworth actually lives here. All the houses are beautiful, and we went on like a bit of a hike up to the Byron Lighthouse, which is where the top right picture is from. We watched the sunset up there, so these are some of the pictures from that. The top left and the bottom right corner are also pictures from the Byron Lighthouse, and basically what we did there is just go to the beach and spend time there, spend time outside, and go to the restaurants. There's little shops downtown and things like that. This was probably my favorite place just because it was so beautiful to be outside. Like, I love spending time outside and doing things like that, so it was great to be here. I wish I could have gone back. Next, I'm going to talk about Noosa Heads. So similar to Byron Bay, this is like a very surf culture area. Everyone's outside. Like, the beach is the main attraction here. The other thing that we did, you can see in the top picture on the left hand side, it was called like the fairy pools. That's what we did. So basically what it is, it's a huge rock formation with a hole in the middle, and the water from the ocean splashes in, creating kind of like a pool. So there still are like fish in there and stuff, but it's just like a protected area of the ocean where you can swim in without like waves and stuff, and you can jump off the rocks. It's a huge tourist attraction that we did. So that was great. And same thing, they had a ton of like shops and restaurants downtown, which is what we did while we were there for the weekend. Next, I'm going to talk about North Stradbroke Island. So this is actually where I went for a week with my school. It was sort of like we did a class, an environmental studies class about plants and animals. So we went here for a week for 4 credits, like a class, and we studied the plants and animals. While we were here, the weather wasn't great. It was raining the whole time, but it was still a great experience to have. I know in the US, there's not really many classes like this where you can be like hands-on studying the area of where you are for class credit. So that was great. So these are some pictures of what we did. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the blue crab, which is something that we studied while we were there. And we saw tons of kangaroos and koalas while we were here. It was a great week. I learned a lot about the area, which is something I love to do. And yeah, so I just have pictures of the water while we were there and everything like that. So next, one of my trips that I took outside of Australia was to Bali, Indonesia. This was a great place to go. I went with a bunch of my friends and we had a great time there. So I'm going to show you some pictures. We saw a ton of animals. We went to the Bali Zoo. So as you can see in the top left corner, we saw elephants. Next to that is kind of just like what their street looked like. When you're walking, like, big thing to do there is go to the little shops that the people have and just look at like little trinkets. So that's what the street looked like. And then next to that is a monkey that we saw at the zoo. Then next to that is a sunset on the beach. Another thing about Bali is that they're very religious there, and there's a ton of temples where people pray. So that's what you can see in the top right corner. That's one of the temples we went to. And then below that, in the bottom row in the middle, that's another temple that we went to, but it was just on the water. And we were actually able to get blessed by the people there, like when we were visiting. And in the bottom row on the right hand side, the pink flowers you can see, we actually visited a coffee plantation when we were there. Making coffee is a big thing in Bali, so we wanted to see what that was about. So we were able to go to a plantation and actually get like taste tests of different coffee that they had made. So overall, Bali was like a great experience. I think it is a very different culture than Australia. I'd say Australia is very similar to the United States in a lot of ways. So it was kind of interesting to go to a different country while I was already across the world for a week and able to see like a very different country. They're very conservative and religious and very different than America. So that was a great experience. Lastly, I did have a planned trip to go to New Zealand. So that was another country I was going to be visiting while I was over there. Unfortunately, because of Corona, I wasn't able to do that because I had to come home early, but I was planning on going there, and I've heard it's beautiful, so I'm hoping that someday I'll be able to go back there. Thank you for watching.